Hey guys, welcome back to this week's video. So today I wanted to get down in the nitty gritty and let's get hella transparent about what kind of fees are associated with the real estate gig. We need to be forthright about this information. So here it is, here's the tea. If you want to know everything that is encompassing the real estate transaction and what kind of money is going to be involved, then keep on watching. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is find a realtor. I really highly suggest that you don't just talk to one realtor. If you want to talk to me, if you've looked through some of my content and you really like what I'm giving you, then by all means, definitely feel free to hop over here. I'd love to answer any questions you may have, but do some research. I'm going to be breaking that all down for you guys in another video. So if you definitely want to see that, leave me a comment below. But how do you do research on your realtor? How do you figure out how many homes have they sold? Really get to know who they are, because it's important to know who you're going into business with, because as we get further and further into the transaction, there might be some negotiation parts of this. You need to trust me to represent your best interest. We also need to have a good dynamic so that we can openly communicate with each other. If we already kind of don't vibe very well together, it's going to make it a lot harder for me to represent your interests as best as I can. Doing your research, getting to know your realtor is really a big thing, and I would say number one step in the process, if you're considering buying a home, you need to get a realtor. Pre-approval is the very next most important step of this entire process. We need to make sure that you're pre-approved before we take you out to go see any properties, because we don't want to waste your time, we don't want to waste our time, and we want to make sure that what we're looking at is what you can afford, especially in the middle of this year when the market was so crazy. We'd go see a house and you wanted that house, you need to put an offer in after we'd seen it. So step two of the process is pre-approval. I personally work with a preferred lender. I like to try to send all my clients to my preferred lender because I personally enjoy working with them. I think that he does really great work, and it's really easy for us to keep those open lines of communication. Oftentimes too, some people want to come to us with their main banks like Wells Fargo, Chase, any credit unions. The thing about that is they have so much other stuff going on at the bank. One of the last things that they're concerned about is getting a loan for your home originated and pumped out quickly. So one of the really nice things about working with preferred lenders, they're going to pay way more attention to your file. It's going to be a lot more personal situation. You're going to have a lot more of an interpersonal connection with your lender, and oftentimes you may even be able to get better rates than what your main bank can give you. Definitely is very, very important for us to get a pre-approval first. It is time to do the most fun part of the entire thing. Let's go shopping. We get to go on a huge shopping spree. I love shopping. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's also a really exciting time for me to get to meet you personally. I really feel like that's where I develop most of my connections and my relationships with my clients, is when we go on the showings. And that's the next part of the process. Before we go too into the process, let's kind of get into the fees of things. So a lot of people always ask, how much do I cost to represent you? So usually the buyer is paid by the seller. The typical industry standard is 6% listing fee. So 3% goes to the buyer's agent and 3% goes to the selling agent. That's like the typical way that we split fees up. Sometimes people get listing discounts. Sometimes people only list it for 5%. So sometimes the seller's agent will get 3%, and sometimes I'll only get like 2.25% or 2.5%. Sometimes agents will have you sign a buyer's agency agreement, which is basically just promising a 3% return. So if you really like working with this realtor and if you really trust them, if that's something that's of value to you, to make sure that they feel whole at the end of the transaction, that's definitely something that you can sign. It's not like a scam or a scheme or anything. Buyer's agency agreements are really common in this industry. I oftentimes like to give out 1 year of home warranty to my clients. Definitely keep that in mind too. So let's get into down payment. Down payment comes down to income and credit a little bit. Typically you can pay anywhere from 3% to 5% to 20%. A little bit, it kind of has to do with you. If you are selling your previous home and you have $80,000 or $100,000 that you want to put down on your other home, so you have a smaller monthly payment, your down payment's going to look a lot different than somebody who maybe doesn't have $10,000. Everybody's financial situation looks different. So there definitely are different programs available for people who need some down payment assistance. Indiana has a HUD sponsored program where they will grant you 3.5% down payment to qualifying borrowers. And that's a really amazing program. It's really helped a lot of first-time home buyers because, they don't have this equity in their other home that they can put down towards their new home. And also usually first-time home buyers are younger. It's not like they're 35, 45, and they've got money in their retirement. They've got money in their savings. Another really amazing down payment thing you can do is if you're a veteran, there's VA loans loans that my lender can do for you, and you have a zero down payment money that you have to bring. So that's a really amazing payment. Another thing is you can get gift money for a down payment. You can have a relative, if your dad, if your mom, your uncle, anybody in your family can grant you money towards your down payment. So you're like, oh my God, I only have $5,000, but I really need like $7,500 for my closing costs and down payment. We can get $3,500 from one of your relatives if they're willing to. In addition to that, as we're writing the contract, we also have the ability to ask the seller to pay closing costs. Now, I usually recommend to have the closing costs reflected in the amount of money that you offer. So if you're only wanting to offer $220,000, but then you decided you're like, hey, I really want to ask for $3,500 in seller's concessions, let's go ahead and ask for $223,500 as the offer price so that we can wrap that money into the offer with them, so that they're like, oh my God, that's another $3,500 of money that I'm not going to make off my property. You know, we want to make this offer worthwhile to the seller just as much as we're trying to make it worthwhile for you. This is a two-way street. Both parties have to agree to be able to move forward. So those are all kinds of a bunch of different options on down payment and where that money can come from. There's also some USDA loan programs that also offer a 0% down. I'm not as well versed on the USDA loans as my lender is, so if you guys want some more information about that, I could have a special episode where he comes in and talks about loan programs that he offers. So we talked about my fees, we talked about the appraisal, we talked about paying for your down payment. Let's talk about closing costs a little bit more. So I did previously mention how we can kind of get some closing costs paid for. Closing costs are separate from your down payment money. So closing costs are to cover lender fees, title fees, taxes, setting up your escrow account, because what your escrow account is basically it's going to automatically pay for your taxes and insurance. So it's all wrapped up into your mortgage payment, so you don't have to worry about paying those separate entities. They're going to do it for you. So that's what your escrow account is, and it costs like $400 to set it up. So they wrap that into the fees. So usually there's $2,500 to $3,500, maybe even a little bit more sometimes. Usually what the huge differentiation is in closing costs has a lot to do with taxes and insurance. The lender fees, the title fees, they pretty much are usually always the same. So those are the two things that really cause things to change. I will say another small little tidbit of information is throughout the loan process, you are going to get several emails about loan disclosures of information that the lender is disclosing to you about your loan. So throughout the transaction, the amount of money that they are saying you're going to be responsible for bringing to closing might not actually always be the amount of money that you need to bring to closing. Sometimes it's just lender documents that they're required to send out. So don't get too scared. Don't be too afraid. Definitely feel free to call them. I know my personal lender, he's really accessible and he's a really great communicator. And hopefully throughout this process, we've been as informative as we possibly can. But sometimes you just miss something. Sometimes you don't understand something, and we totally get that. So don't be embarrassed. We're really just here to help you. And then I know what you're thinking. Is there any more fees? Yes. So the last two things are your appraisal and inspection. Your appraisal is $550 with my preferred lender. It can either be paid at closing or it can be paid upfront, as well as the inspection. So the inspection is out-of-pocket expense. It's not in any means required, but it's highly, highly recommended. And those range from anywhere from like $230 to $450, depending on, you know, what company it is, what kind of services you're getting done. You had to add on like termite inspection into the additional regular inspection. Sometimes that's a little bit of an additional fee, so just keep that in mind. But that's really it. Those are all of the fees that are associated with the transaction and the process. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out personally or shoot me a comment down below. I'd love to answer any of your guys' questions. That's what I'm here for. I want you to know what all of the hot real estate tea is. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Definitely feel free to give this video a like, shoot me a comment, and do not forget to hit subscribe so that you can get notified when I post new videos about all of the real estate content that you could ever want to know about. Thank you, Indy. It's been a pleasure. I hope to see you again in the future.